a genius, and just between us, I think he's more popular than Jesus. When he drops his master thesis, the contents thereof will tear you to pieces just like Reese's. Monkeys have been trained by he to drain thy pee, all up in the WC for thee. A task most extraordinary. An early prodigy, a multi-instrumentalist. Consider him a transcendentalist, transcending all the barriers set forth by past elitists. Certainly creme de creme of his species. His feces has a bouquet of a spring day. His Duckworth is reminiscent of high royalty. Duckworth. All provincial athletic superiority punctuates his legendary scholastic notoriety. A scientist with patents and sobriety, a published journalist whose column appears regularly in Variety. Of course, I'm speaking of Duckworth. Are you familiar with Duckworth? Gordon Duckworth. Are you familiar with Duckworth? Are you familiar with Duckworth? Lieutenant Duckworth. Are you familiar with him? Are you speaking of Duckworth? Gordon Duckworth. Are you familiar with Duckworth? Are you speaking of Duckworth? Lieutenant Duckworth. Are you familiar with him?
Speaking of Duckworth, are you? As he touched a two, an inspirational guru, it's simply voodoo. The way he can appease the crowd behind that mysterious shroud. Perfect English gent of huge proportions, serving portions of enlightenment. Once again, a proper gent is here, riding in his Bentley or visit the rolls. Anyways he controls firmly mercy on the souls that cross he. Namely, the rebel community who see no immunity from the wrath of Duckworth, whilst in the path of Duckworth. Duckworth, talking about Duckworth. A loyal servant am I, and quite observant I try to be while working under Corey. For if I plan to see his bread lines for me and my whole entire family. Quite a temper is he, the maestro, savior. With honor I give him my labor. Gordon Duckworth. Are you familiar with Duckworth? Gordon Duckworth. Are you familiar with Duckworth? Are you familiar with Duckworth? Lieutenant Duckworth. Are you familiar with him? Are you speaking of Duckworth? Gordon Duckworth. Are you familiar with Duckworth? Are you speaking of Duckworth? Lieutenant Duckworth. Are you familiar with him?
Are you familiar with Duckworth? Are you familiar with Duckworth? Are you familiar with Duckworth?
Are you familiar with Duckworth? Are you familiar with Duckworth? Gordon Duckworth. Are you familiar with Duckworth? Are you familiar with Duckworth? Lieutenant Duckworth. Are you familiar with him? Are you speaking of Duckworth? Gordon Duckworth. Are you familiar with Duckworth? Are you speaking of Duckworth? Lieutenant Duckworth. Are you familiar with him? Yes, we're familiar with Duckworth. Yes, we're familiar with Duckworth. Yes, we're familiar with Duckworth. Of course, we're familiar with Duckworth. Yes, we're familiar with Duckworth. Yes, we're familiar with Duckworth. Yes, we're familiar with Duckworth. Of course, we're familiar with Duckworth.